Hello ladies and gentlemen, I am Lucas and you are watching PL. As you probably remember, we finished the construction of the Tamiya's Panther with super unique super bridges and a pile of 3D accessories and other super elements that can be found on the modeling market. If you haven't seen this episode, click on the link above. You will find there the entire history of this model construction, and additionally you can also have a look at the Open the Box series to see what I used to build it. Today we will focus on camo painting, details preparation, zimmerit damage and hand painting of tactical markings on the model. I'm sure you will find something interesting for yourself today, as always. We start by disassembling the model into elements that are easier to paint. Of course, the wheels, covers, bridges, hull, turret and tracks will be painted separately. But before we start doing it, all these elements need to be cleaned of dirt that accumulated on them during construction. Model degreaser is perfect for this, it dries quickly and removes dirt. I use a large soft brush to avoid the details and small elements damaging. Of course, a mask is recommended as not to inhale the chemicals. I usually cover all metal parts with a metal primer. I have already talked about the advantages of this product in the previous episodes. But the one thing is very important. You have to remember not to put too much of it, especially on the grill nets, because it's very easy to clog the small holes. I think it's better to do it with almost dry brush. The same was done on the towing cables and all the rest of the metal parts. And now applying of the primer. This time the grey color fell into my hand first, so I covered all the elements with it. Work for 5 minutes, especially when everything is properly prepared and fastened. And we start painting the camo. One note, as you can see on the model, it's already painted on the hull's bottom with red primer, mini aluminium, somehow, all because I was preparing a separate film about painting and preparing the wheels. A link is above. It was natural that this fragment would be painted, so don't be surprised. The first color is of course the base dark yellow, but as you probably know, Tamiya released the second version, and this is exactly the color I'm talking about. In my opinion, a little brighter than the first version, but I like it even more. It paints like Tamiya, without any problems. The paint has good pigmentation and covers well, even though it's quite a light one. The whole hull was covered with this shade. This is where the entire process is carried out, with all the turns that need to be done with the model so that the paint reaches all nooks and crannies. Generally, easy, nice and pleasant. And nothing more about yellow painting, just relax and watch it. And we have a ready base color for further work. The second color is dark green. I wanted to do a camo painted somewhere in the field by soldiers. Do you remember when I showed pictures of Panther 4 in one of the previous episodes? Exactly the same philosophy. Different thickness of stripes, different intensity of color, some additional stains of paint. Completely stress free. I don't like the perfect camo painting. On the side shields you won't see what I paint anyway, because the bridges will cover most of them, but you can check on invisible section whether what we want to achieve is possible. The models of vehicles we made were not civilian cars, and I'm sure that crews were aware that they wouldn't be using them for more than a few months. So let's play with the airbrush. Painting the hull was done exactly the same way as on the side shields, but one thing is worth noting. Look, I didn't take the turret down to paint it. Could be more convenient, right? But I wanted a trace on the hull. In reality it wasn't taken off for painting, it's obvious. More, it's possible that it didn't even stand in the straight ahead position, so who knows how it looked exactly as a result of the painting work. As for the paint, the shade is very nice and the paint itself behaved exactly like its predecessor. Yes, correct, predecessor. Okay, no more talking about green, just relax and watch it. You can also drink something nice. Okay, are you there? Wake up! It's time for the last color, which is red-brown. And here I was totally surprised. I imagined this color completely different. I hadn't looked into the paint jar before, and now when I open it to toss in the metal mixing bowl, my jaw dropped. I didn't like it at all, and I even started to think that maybe someone in the factory had mixed up the shades. Well, I tried on the wheels first and it turned out pretty well, so I thought that on the hull would be also okay. The effect is as you can see. Is it brown? Yes, it is. Not as typical as a flat brown, for example, but it works well with the base and green. Here we go, the same method. Oops! Shit happens. But I didn't care too much. In real life something like that could also happen, right? Anyway, later weathering will probably cover this failure. And we have camo ready. It takes a bit, but the effect is very good. I like it. Do you like it? No? So think again, my friend. Think again. Okay, it's time for the details. First we will deal with the bridges because I want to add them to the model before I start weathering. The construction was based on plywood boards, so you have to paint them that way. First I applied a buff, but it turned out to be too dark for me, so I decided to lighten it with Egyptian desert sand, which is definitely lighter. It was a good move. Generally I painted with a lighter shade so as to cover the most exposed places without penetrating into the recesses. Thanks to this I got such, let's say, unrefined color modulation. Well, let's not delve into it, later paintings and weathering will do their job here. Before I started painting, I looked at some photos of plywood on the internet. What I wanted the most was to see what color is the best to paint the rings on the boards. Brownish orange or cork was perfect for this purpose. Different amounts of water used for diluting gave great results because the rings have different volume. And their irregularity also gave me a chance to show off, and in total you could have 100% of artistic freedom. With so many elements to paint, it took a while to cover all the boards with lines. I know they may be too big, but they still look good. If I had painted them even smaller, it would have taken a whole day if not more. And that's how it looks like. Pretty cool and realistic to me. But what next? Come on, ladies and gentlemen, let's paint it green. Yes, exactly, green. There must be some masking on the military vehicle, right? But let's use typical civilian green for painting fences, gutters or other household things. For war machine the paint should be scratched, of course. So for that you have to cover the whole with easy chipping medium. Easy peasy. It takes some time for the product to dry and we can start painting. And here the same like before, without any mega precision, just quick color coverage which in a moment will be washed away, scratched and damaged in a large part of it. Using the tap water we start scratching. A simple matter. It's worth using different brushes and different tools. An ordinary toothpick will be very useful because diversity is the key to success. Destroying the paint wasn't as fast as applying it, but the end result is great. Of course there is no wash on them and what you can see are only the colorized parts, but despite this they look promising. The bridges are dry so they can be glued. I always stick the resin together with super glue so I don't have much room for maneuver unless I use black super glue. Here I wanted everything to be ready very quickly, so the standard glue plus the exact fit were the basis. Full focus and... shit! One more time. Someone may ask why. After that you didn't paint the details on the side of the hull. Right, but at that point I had a different plan. I wanted to glue the bridges and put tarps on the model, which would undoubtedly cover many details, but for this I needed them to be stably mounted. Plan was a plan and the reality was different. I changed the assumptions and decided to paint what you can see. It wasn't really a problem. One afternoon and everything was ready. Okay, the talking is going on, but we have here the machine guns. I didn't use the black for them, but dark grey, especially German grey. It's perfect for this. Later I will add metallic abrasion and it will look very realistic. Now the towing cables. To paint them I used the same grey, but I added a little silver. Of course, wherever possible I put a piece of paper as not to stain the body of the vehicle. But of course it wasn't possible everywhere, and here you can see how perfectly I stained my camo. This will need to be corrected later, or I will cover it with weathering or with a rag. What? None of you do that? I don't believe it. I use dark brown for painting steel elements, exhaust and tool parts. The steel tools are colored with dark grey and silver mixture. Depending on the mood, wooden elements are painted with different shades of sand. On the wire cutters, reddish brown handles are generally used. Taking the advantage of the fact that the tools are already painted, I decided to stick them to the engine plate. The proper arrangement is very important, I always try to make it look realistic. I generally paint the ends of the towing ropes with dark yellow, green or dark grey. I need to make a separate video about painting cables. Oh, here I forgot to finish the wire cutters. The most important thing is that weathering in most cases causes the colors we put on the details change to darker. Keep this in mind and use the weathering sensitively. A little trick to brighten the surface is to paint the heads of the screws silver. Anyone who saw the tank up close must have noticed that the amount of paint worn off is quite large, especially in all protruding parts. It's also worth doing it on our models. I like such effects. On this model there won't be a lot of work with the exhaust, but you need to put the base color on them. So here the brown I mentioned earlier. Here on the back plate, a perfect example to break the monotonous look. It's enough to paint the jack with a different shade and it will be much more contrasted. Of course dust will suppress this effect, but I'm sure it will still be visible. To show the jack I had to turn the model upside down, so you have the opportunity to see a fragment of the finished wheels, tracks and a piece of a chassis. I didn't want to mention it too much in this episode, because everything will be shown next week. The details are ready and now it's time to have a bit of fun with zimmerit. As you remember, in the previous episode I did some damage to its surface, which now needs to be painted properly. Of course, a red primer paint identical to that I used on the hull was applied with a brush. Now you can see exactly how much chipped zimmerit and traces of heats we have. I painted the edges with a light grey color and then rubbed it with a dry brush. Of course, the weathering will change the look of these damages a bit, so for now this is just a base paint. And there will be probably a lot more chipping. And the last but very important stage of painting, the tactical numbers. I honestly admit that I copied the number and its shape from the set I found in the internet. It's from a tank that served in the 12th SS Panther division. It even suited me because the figures I wanted to add to the model are also from this unit. And here you have the entire idea on how to make hand-painted numbers. First, in the graphics program I enlarged the fragment from the photo I found. That's why pixels are so visible. But it doesn't matter because I only need it to make the template. I cut the printed numbers on plain paper with a sharp knife and the template was actually ready for use. To stick it to the model I used masking tape strips. It was a faster solution than cutting a number in masking tape, especially since I didn't have such a wide one among my tools. After attaching to the model I used a sponge to apply the paint. I didn't do it with white but with ivory color. In this way I made 3 sets for the entire turret. After removing the template, the numbers obviously needed to be corrected with a brush, but that was exactly the point. Each digit was additionally corrected and aligned, although I didn't care about the different lines. Well, all because I assumed that the soldier who painted such numbers wasn't Picasso, and moreover he probably did it in a hurry, as evidenced by other numbers that were painted in this unit, whether on Panthers or on Panzer IV. I think every fan on German armor has seen it. Okay, the white is painted and now the filling, of course with black acrylic paint. After painting the whole thing I made the necessary corrections here and there, especially in places where the hand with the brush has moved a little too far. Again, the method and philosophy were the same as before. It took about 1 minute to complete a single digit with black, so doing the whole thing was about 10 minutes plus painting white before. I think it took me no more than 45 minutes from starting work on the computer to the end of the last digit. And I'm very happy with the effect because it turned out perfectly as I wanted and planned. I did the same with painting crosses on the back and sides. I have used the decals as a pattern to cut the cross. Then I stuck it on the masking tape and cut it around. I glued the prepared template on the model and put the paint on it, just like in the case of numbers. The side crosses required a bit more work as the reduced template was needed to fit into a limited space. But after a little combination it worked and the white paint was put on. Later, of course, with black paint I filled the center of each cross. The inaccuracies don't bother me at all because they make it look very realistic. Someone may say that I justify myself, but I will answer that if I wanted to perfectly reproduce the numbers and crosses, I would simply put the decals. And we are almost at the finish. Just painting the antenna, but here the camera didn't focus, so I won't show it for too long, and we have the model ready for the weathering. What do you think about all of this? I am very pleased with the effect I have obtained. I hope you like it as well, and today's video will be useful for someone who decides to build this model. For now, thank you everyone for the time you spent with me. Also remember to subscribe to the channel and click the like under this material, because thanks to this, my films will appear regularly in your offers. If you also leave a comment, this video will do much better in YouTube algorithms. It would also be great if you shared the link to this movie, and I'm sure there is a lot of modelers who haven't seen my work on YouTube yet. It also depends on you, more of your support means more motivation to work. Do the job, my friends! Mega thanks to my patrons who joined the team this month. You are my heroes. If you are wondering whether to join, check what I have for you on my Patreon site. You have 3 levels of support there, so you can choose what you are interested in. Check it out! And for the end, some riddle. The model has some small damage and it's not zimmerit. Who can tell me where it is? And that's all for today. See you next time. Cheers!